Since I started doing knife sharpening equipment reviews, there's been one sharpener that's been requested more than any other, and that is the Worksharp MK2. Pocket, hunting, serrated, kitchen, scissors, tools. Main question is, how long are these belts gonna last? So this isn't gonna be a full-on overview and how to use video, since there's plenty of videos already on those subjects. I just want to see what this thing is truly capable of for your average user. Right now at a price of $89.95, does this thing actually work? Who is it for? Who is it not for? And is it a good value? And as a self-proclaimed professional knife sharpener, I do this for a living. Oh, it's taking a really nice edge. Can I get good results with it? And as a beginner, I brought one in.
So this thing, I like this a lot.
Can he get good results with it? Let's find out. It's whittling. It's whittling sharp. Now I knew the second I saw this thing, based on my experience, that it was going to sharpen knives. I have no doubt that this thing will probably sharpen a knife. The question was, how sharp could you get a knife with this thing if you had
the legendary sharpening experience of moi?
For sharpening ability, I tested this thing on everything and anything you can imagine. From butter knives, to cheap stainless swords, to crowbars, to S110V, to A2 tool steel, and it did sharpen everything. But it didn't sharpen everything to hair whittling sharp. Nope. Now the only knife that I was able to get hair whittling sharp was my custom heat treated ugly knife made out of A2 tool steel at 63 HRC.
Ugly, but it's got a very good personality.
That's hair whittling sharp off of an $80 sharpener and a 6 micron strop. Here is a very close-up image on the microscope, and there is no trace of a burr along the apex. This particular knife just sharpens so well with just about anything. Now with some knives, the burr came right off. This A2, for example, ZDP 189, and some cheap kitchen knives. Zero problems with burr removal. All of them got extremely sharp, almost hair whittling sharp, even though the only knife that I actually got hair whittling sharp was this A2. Now for other knives, including S110V, other cheap kitchen knives, CPM 3V, even with a custom heat treatment at 61 to 62 HRC, I had a really difficult time with burr removal using the MK2. And here's an example of that. This is a CPM 3V at 61 HRC. And initially it looks good, but upon closer inspection there's still a microscopic burr along the edge. And this is after stropping on a 6 micron strop. So after testing this thing a bunch of times now, I've come to the conclusion that the jump from 220 grit to 6000 grit is a little bit too much of a jump for most steels to handle. So this is one of the problems encountered when skipping grits, as they say, or going from a very coarse grit to a very fine grit, is we have all these areas right here where the scratch pattern is still so deep that the super fine grit won't refine between that coarse pattern. So with this Worksharp MK2, we have 80 grit, 220 grit, and 6000 grit. That is too big a jump, in my opinion, for the vast majority of steels in order to get full burr removal, since the burr really needs to be minimized slightly more for the 6000 grit to be most effective. Now this is my biggest and possibly only complaint with this sharpener. They sell other grits on their website. Now I wasn't able to test those grits because they were sold out. So please get them back in stock. Now me personally, I would like to see a 400 grit belt included with the MK2. Come on, it's only one more belt. I think that would go a long way to help with burr minimization and allow the 6000 grit belt to do its job much more effectively. Now you can't be serious, right? Surely you can't be serious. That can't be your only complaint with the MK2. You're right, it's not my only complaint. Because I have one giant big complaint with this thing that affects approximately 10% of the world's population. If you're left-handed it's gonna
feel a little weird.
This is the right-handed work sharp. I am 98% certain this is a right-handed only tool. You see, if you try and use it the other way, you can't get, it won't go in.
This is it.
Have you improved on your sharpening skills at all?
No.
Okay, good. There you go. Knock yourself out.
I don't know how. Oh, that's pretty sharp to me.
Yeah, man, like it's almost there.
So this thing, I like this a lot. That is super easy, and literally the hardest part about it is keeping it flat against the side here. But after what was that?
You would practice with it.
Using it twice, I got it the second time, no problem. That is wicked sharp.
That's probably put me out of business.
Yeah. It's a katana. It's a wakizashi.
Just do it as hard as you can. Just do it. It didn't even
go through.
It didn't even go through.
Just a baseball bat.
Guess we should try and fix it. What about something with a little more carbon in it? There is no spoon. There we go. This is the old eyeball test. It's in there because it's like all dented. I'm gonna be as forthcoming as I can, Mr. Worksharp. How long do the belts last? You get a lot of sharpening done with that.
Yeah.
Now so far, what you've seen up until now has been done with 3 belts. And at this point, the 6000 grit is about done. Now we sharpened everything from EDC knives to kitchen knives to swords to crowbars to pruners to, I think we even sharpened a shovel. And the 80 grit and the 220 grit are still capable of doing some light work. So I'd say without counting everything exactly, belt wear isn't really a huge problem for your average user. The belt replacement kits are about 14 bucks. And with the amount of knives that you'll be able to sharpen, it's definitely a pretty good value. Now you have 2 angles with this thing, 20 and 25 degrees. Now keep in mind, we are sharpening on a slack belt, so the angles are not going to be exactly accurate since it is a convex grind. Now after sharpening an absolute crap load of stuff, I've come to the conclusion that 20 degrees is the magic number for knives. Let me show you why. So here I've sharpened some S30V at 25 degrees. And although it does cut paper quite well, it just isn't shaving sharp. See, it cuts paper, but it's not shaving. So here's the apex at 25 degrees. And even though we did mostly remove the burr on this S30V, the apex just isn't pointy enough to shave super well due to that convex grind. So let's make the apex pointier and sharpen at 20 degrees and see what happens.
Pointy is scary.
So at 20 degrees, you get much better results with this than you do at 25 degrees. In my opinion, every knife sharpened on this should be at the 20 degree angle setting. With this S30V here now sharpened at 20 degrees, we are shaving sharp, no problem. Let's take a look at it and see what it looks like. So even though we are shaving sharp, we still have those in between grit burr thingies happening. And again, why I'd like to see a 400 grit belt to see if it alleviates this problem. So it seems like you're kind of going back and forth between it works good, it doesn't work good, it removes the burr, it doesn't remove the burr.
Let's just agree to disagree, my friend.
Nope. I mean, I'm actually really impressed with it. Well, it sort of depends on the steel type, the hardness, the heat treatment, and maybe even a little bit of technique. And I really couldn't pin down what it was about the steels that gave varying results with burr removal. And more testing on this is going to have to be done with each individual steel in order to figure this out. However, I did notice that high carbide steels like S110V tend to struggle the most with burr removal, or at least with the included belts. Now I may change my opinion on this if I end up testing other belts and if they do make a difference on those particular steels. So does this really matter? In my opinion, no, because you could have the same problem with stones or any other system for that matter, not just the MK2. And this is really going to depend on exactly what steel you're sharpening as to whether or not you need a 400 grit belt, a 400 grit stone, a 1000 grit stone, a 1000 grit belt, etc. to aid in the burr removal process. And this is where you have to remember that there is still a little bit of skill involved in getting the absolute best results out of this system or any system.
I think it's the same with anything. Like there's nothing that you can just go like this and make it work.
No.
Like you have to know, you have to sort of pay attention to what you're doing with everything.
So who is this system for? Well, I think it's for anybody who just wants to sharpen a knife. And they're not really concerned about getting that extra last 10% on those more high-end last 10% type steels, if that makes sense. They just want a sharp knife to be able to cut a tomato or hack through a 2x4 with everyday common steels. Now, who is this system not for? It's not for those people who care about that extra last 10% on those higher end steels like S110V.
Nope.
Now, Worksharp's diamond abrasive belts may help with these higher end steels and these higher end knives, but I have yet to test them, so I really can't comment. And while this thing technically does sharpen these steels, meaning it takes them from a dull state to a sharper state, it does some kind of weird things to the apex.
So this is S110V sharpened to the 6000 grit belt. And after most of the burr has been removed with some stropping, the apex looks extremely coarse still, which is why it cuts paper so well but won't get hair whittling or even shaving sharp very easily with this sharpener.
And I could not get that extra last 10% to get that real fine bite in these steels that you can with a normal diamond sharpening stone setup. And again, I believe this comes back to the abrasives being used, not the actual sharpener itself. So what about heat? I think a lot of people are concerned about heat buildup with a powered belt sharpener like this. Now, to address this quickly, I didn't notice any heat buildup using this sharpener in a standard manner. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that it is a slack belt sharpening system, meaning there's no platen behind that belt to build up that friction heat. If you do stall and grind in one place for quite a while, you can build up quite a bit of heat along the apex. And this can usually be spotted relatively easily by a dark colored burr along the apex. That dark color means that you've heated up the apex beyond a certain temperature and the steel changes color. But I did not experience any of that using this in the standard common manner. So overall, if someone were to ask me what's the simplest system to use for simply sharp knives, this thing kicks the absolute butt of those other tabletop electric knife sharpeners.
The most hated knife sharpener
Oh my gosh.
I think I've ever bought.
This is blasphemy! This is madness!
This is Workshop!
Hello? You can let me out now.